Hey, it's Zara, ReviewZoneHD, and I'm bringing you guys the top 10 zombie games with Dead in the title on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And when you stop and think about it, zombies seem to be the ultimate punching bag for both movies and video games. They're generally slow, stupid, and usually pretty easy to put down. It can make even a Call of Duty player look like a superhero at times. And yes, that was a joke. I actually did enjoy Black Ops 2, but this countdown features the best 10 zombie titles that I could find that have Dead in the title, which is key, so that immediately eliminates titles like Resident Evil 5, a game that I absolutely loved when it first released. This countdown also does not include games like Deadliest Warrior and the Dead or Alive series. This is strictly focused on zombie titles with Dead in the name, and yes, I did have to repeat that, because if I didn't, I'd have to say it about 20 times over again replying in the comments, so I'm saving myself a headache on that. Now, I arranged these titles based off their Metacritic scores, which will be displayed next to the title at the top of the screen. Without further delay, let's go ahead and get into the countdown. This title could have been so much better had they just gave it some decent controls and a slightly better environment. It wasn't a horrible game by any means, and if they make a sequel, I'd definitely check it out, but it is holding down the number 10 spot going off its Metacritic score, which I would have most likely have placed this one at the number 9 spot based off my own opinion, so it's pretty close to where I would have put it. I really enjoyed this game. I do think 71 is a pretty unfair score for what this game is packing, but it could have been because the game had a lot of issues when it first released before it was patched. But out of all the titles in this list, it provides the second best scare factor, the second best environment, and maybe the best in the gore factor. Going off my own opinion, I would have placed this one much lower in the list, most likely in the 5th spot. I think 72 is a pretty accurate score for this one. It has some really nice looking graphics, but it's pretty weak in other elements, such as music and reasons to keep playing. For a horror title, it's not very scary, and it can quickly sink into the mindless fun category after just a couple hours. I do think it's the best title out of the Dead Rising series, and number 8 in this list is a pretty good spot for it. House of the Dead 3 and Overkill are both available for the consoles, but this is my favorite one out of the bunch. 73 is a bit of a low score in my opinion, but this is a very short game, so I guess it's kind of understandable. It's still one of the best rail shooters that you can get into, and it's even more fun in local co-op. In the best top-down shooter countdown video that I did last year for the PlayStation 3, this one clocked in at the number 2 spot, just behind Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light. It's a pretty good zombie shooter that most gamers got to enjoy when the PlayStation Network offered it for free last year. I think 77 is a pretty good score for this one, and the number 6 spot is also a pretty decent spot for it as well. I have to be honest, I really didn't like this game. This is the only game on this list that I just couldn't get into. I would have placed this one in the 10th and final spot, but quality-wise, it's a pretty good game, although the action can be a bit slow and stages can drag on a little too long. Just not one that I particularly enjoyed playing. I've said it once and I'll say it again, Red Dead Redemption is my all-time favorite PlayStation 3 game. This expansion was decent, not nearly as good as the original game though. The 87 score is pretty fair, and the 4th spot on this list is where I would have placed it anyways. It's light on the scare and gore factor, but it's still a pretty good zombie title. We actually have a tie for the number 2 spot, so I had to pick between this one and the next title for which one I enjoyed more. I know Left 4 Dead has a die-hard loyal fan base. The first one was pretty good. This one's a very awesome game, very fast-paced arcade-style action, and an 89 is a pretty high score for any title, but it was very well deserved for this one. This would have been my number 1 choice on this list, as it's one of my favorite PlayStation 3 titles. Most likely the scariest game published for the consoles, features one of the most hardcore trophies that you're going to find in any game, and when I think of the hard genre for video games, Dead Space is the first thing that comes to mind. The setting and the story were creative. It's one of the few games that can really get me tensed up. Highly recommend this title if you haven't already played it. Dead Space 3 is right around the corner, and I for one cannot wait to get my hands on it. It beat my own prediction that Assassin's Creed 3 would win Game of the Year last year. It beat out Borderlands 2 and Dishonored, and it dishes out enough tough choices to make even a bloodthirsty gamer have to stop and think a little bit. The 94 it's currently rocking also places it as one of the best titles ever made according to its Metacritic score. Even if I don't fully agree with the score or that it should have beat out some of the other titles for Game of the Year, I still have to respect the fact that this little company beat out all the bigger ones last year and beat out some pretty good titles on this list as well. And I gave this game a great review. I think it's a pretty sweet game, but I personally would take the Countdown games in the 2, 3, and 4 spot over this one any day of the week, but that's just me. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this countdown. This is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and thanks for stopping by.